The following program is intended for mature audiences.
Rudy's Revelation.
Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast today. Start of the morning, Monday morning. Welcome. Straight with a technical snafu. I don't know what the fuck happened there, but I'm going to have to fix it while we start. It is January 11th. Welcome to the live stream. A little housekeeping. I will not have an episode tomorrow morning. However, tomorrow night, we will have another episode of Tuesdays with Perry. So thanks for joining me today. Well, today in the news, Glenn Beck says a U.S. civil war is inevitable. We're going to explore that. Also, we're going to hear from Christopher Wright, U.S. Energy Secretary, who was on CBS Face the Nation yesterday. So we're going to talk a little bit about that episode. We're going to talk about Ilhan Omar's appearance there, which is going to certainly be interesting to talk about, just because what Maggie Brennan didn't ask, etc. And I think we're going to start with, if I could make it past the technical snafus here, if I could make it past any technical snafus, we're going to start with U.S. Energy Secretary Christopher Wright and his appearance on Sunday morning yesterday. And the point he's making is it's in America's interest. The military action in Venezuela was in America's interest. Also, people were worried about the meeting he had with oil executives. Well, we're going to have oil executives develop that oil and increase production. Why? To lower oil prices for the United States and the consumer, you most particularly. Because once you lower oil prices, gas prices, everything else becomes cheaper. So let's go to Christopher Wright sitting down with Maggie Brennan on CBS Face the Nation.
The United States Secretary of Energy, Chris Wright.
We will see relatively rapid change.
I don't know what's happening here, so just bear with me a second. We have a framing issue. I had this last time I tried to run a clip here.
The United States Secretary of Energy, Chris Wright.
We will see relatively rapid change, improvement on the ground in Venezuela. This is a process. We're only 8 days into the process, but it's off to a strong start. We need to work with the people that have the guns today to ultimately move the country to a representative government and a better station. But what you've got to prevent in the meantime is a collapse of the nation. The first thing to do is to reduce the damage to the United States, the inflow of guns and criminals and immigrants and drugs into the United States, the destabilizing of a key part of the Western Hemisphere. We need to stop that. You know, we have a quarantine around their ability to ship oil outside of Venezuela. All of that goes through American crude marketers, and then that crude goes out into the market. We collect those funds and bring them back to Venezuela to better the lives of Americans and Venezuelans. Think of what President Trump has done for the American oil and gas industry. He's driven down the price of oil. He's dramatically reduced the profit.
There's an oversupply of oil, and
Right.
now you're going to put more on the market.
Exactly. That's not good for American oil and gas companies.
Because it makes it less profitable for them to actually go and invest in drill, baby, drill.
Exactly. Democrats and President Biden are fantastic for American oil and gas companies because they try to restrict the supply to something that's essential to life, which only has one possible impact, which is to drive up prices and grow profitability. So President Trump is no helper to the oil and gas industry. And certainly there's no corruption, preferential placement of people There's none of that. I can assure you of that. I'm in the center of this. All that was an auction open to all American firms. There were many bidders, including the coalition of bidders you mentioned. We want those assets to get as much money as possible to go back to the creditors of the Venezuelan government. And we want American refinery assets owned by Americans that are going to increase the throughput, drive down the price of gasoline in America.
Chevron's leadership, they're already in Venezuela, we should say, said it'll take 18 to 24 months to even increase oil production by 50%.
They've been there for 100 years, and likely Chevron's going to be there 50 years from now. We want to bring a representative government to the people of Venezuela. I think then you'll see the full sovereignty back to the government of Venezuela. We don't have a legitimate government of Venezuela today. We'd like to move and get there. But America's there as
a timeline?
25 years this country's gone in decline.
Yeah.
President Trump, out of the box, creative intervention has allowed us to change the game.
All right, there you heard from Christopher Wright, U.S. Energy Secretary for the United States, obviously saying that increasing oil production from Venezuela is going to help oil markets and in turn lower gas prices for you and me. That's pretty important. So we're interested in seeing that happen. I think I fixed my technical difficulty there. I'm just going to take this opportunity to invite you to engage the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment, and share the podcast. Remember, I'm here every day, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. live stream, Rumble, and YouTube. Join me on social media. Getter, Facebook, Minds, Truth Social, and Substack. All right, without further ado, we're going to get back to Venezuela at the end of the live stream today. But first we're going to deal more with Minnesota, obviously. But we're also going to get back to CBS Face the Nation, where Ilhan Omar had an appearance, and little do you know that she wasn't asked any hardball questions, and she was allowed to not only wiggle out of any culpability surrounding, ICE engagements, etc., but also wiggle out of culpability as far as the Somali fraud in Minnesota, which is really all this is a distraction from. So let's get in the headlines for today, Monday, January 11th. We're going to start with The Nation. Now, this leftist rag here, The Nation, has the headline, U.S. border agents intentionally stepped in front of moving vehicles to justify shooting at them. Well, this is very interesting. They go on to say an internal review of the U.S. Border Patrol raises serious questions about the agency's use of force policy. Okay, let's just go over I don't want to say semantics so much as this headline, U.S. border agents intentionally stepped in front of moving vehicles to justify shooting at them. Here's the reality that the nation really doesn't get. When you're effecting an arrest, you don't want the people to drive away while you're trying to effect an arrest. So in this incident in Minneapolis with ICE, the ICE officer stepped in front of the vehicle. Why? To keep her from driving away. Why? Because what happened 3 months prior is this same agent was dragged 50 yards from a vehicle fleeing arrest. So you don't want to allow vehicles to flee agents making an arrest. Now, this is different than a traffic stop. A traffic stop, you don't shoot at a vehicle fleeing a traffic stop. So the person pulls over, the policeman pulls behind him, and then the policeman gets out of the car and the car takes off. The cop can't shoot at the car. However, if you're trying to effect an arrest, what you're doing is making an arrest. So you don't allow the person to leave. Right? That's some sort of liberal mindset thinks that if law enforcement is trying to arrest you, that you can try to get away. No, that's resisting arrest. That's also a crime. So she was basically resisting arrest by trying to flee. The reason the agent stepped in front of the vehicle is to keep her from fleeing. Now, she decided to flee anyway, connecting with the officer. So if you're trying to effect an arrest and a suspect who you're trying to put into custody comes at you with a deadly weapon, regardless of where the wheels are pointed or what have you, they could use deadly force. You probably heard from the Chicago police chief from 3 months ago was saying these exact same things. And we're going to play that tomorrow night before I introduce Perry on another episode of Tuesdays with Perry. We go live stream about 9:15. So stay tuned for that. And just as a reminder, I won't have a show tomorrow morning. Got a job, got to take care of. So let's move on with the headlines, obviously surrounding Minneapolis, which is the catalyst now for what could be seen as a civil war, because the entrenched left, they're going to use their hate towards Trump, towards police, towards conservatives and Republicans, to the point where there's going to end up being some sort of retaliation, either from the government, law enforcement itself, or perhaps from individuals. We don't know. We don't know how it's going to happen. I pray that doesn't happen. All right, next up, New York Post. Nearly 30 protesters arrested, cop injured in more chaotic Minneapolis protests after Renee Nicole Good shooting. One America News, ICE agent phone footage. Rachel Good's wife shouted, "Drive, baby, drive," moments before fatal shooting. All right, so just a reminder, I'm going to move quick because we got over 40 headlines to go through, to read, and to analyze. So this one specifically from One American News. If you didn't see the footage, again, we're going to play it tomorrow night along with the Chicago police chief's statements about what has gone on, even preemptively so. If you saw the footage, you see clearly two things, is that they were engaged in illegal activity, which was impeding, interfering with law enforcement duty, right? So this isn't some holster sniffer, right? I've had probably more interactions with police, arrested several times. I've been in jail than other people. It's not that I love police. I don't necessarily love police because a lot of times they can be up your ass and it's completely unwarranted. However, if you own property, who protects your property rights? The police do, for the most part. You could do it too. I mean, if you have castle doctrine in your state, stand your ground, etc. But like in my state, even if someone broke into my house and I killed them, I'd probably go to jail. In any case, if you own property, or if you're just a person and you don't want to go and be assaulted, you need the police. You need the police to do the dirty work of arresting people for illicit, illegal behavior, etc. So in this headline, One American News, ICE agent phone footage, Rachel Good's wife shouted, "Drive, baby, drive," moments before fatal shooting. They were activists. Some could say terrorists. We'll get into that in just a second. But she said her lesbian wife said, "Drive, baby, drive." Her lesbian wife even admitted that she took Renee Good, her wife, down there to get involved in this direct action. This was a direct action against law enforcement. You put yourself interfering with law enforcement, anything could happen. You could be arrested, obviously is what they were trying to do, or you could be hurt or possibly killed. So her wife brought her down there, said, "Drive, baby, drive," when they were trying, her wife saw the officers approaching the car, say, get out of the vehicle, get out of the vehicle. And her wife said, drive, baby, drive. So she did indeed cause her wife's death. Because if you're being put under arrest, unless you want to get killed or hurt or whatever, if you're being put under arrest, you're like, yes, sir, no, sir, fight it fucking in court. That's what you're supposed to do. More headlines, New York Post, Renee Nicole Good seen dancing as she blocks ICE agents for several minutes before fatal Minneapolis shooting. I won't play the video for sake of time. I'll just show you what she did. So when she's blocking the road, she's beeping her horn and she's dancing in a mocking fashion. There's one thing I can't stand more than anything. It's more infuriating is mocking, right? It's childish, and it certainly infuriates me because it's not any sort of intellectual retort. It's a child's game. And here they're playing a child's game in an adult world. And the statement that's going around the internet recently, play stupid games, win stupid prizes, as well as FAFO. Newly surfaced video appears to show Renee Nicole Good blocking ICE agents with her SUV for more than 3 minutes before she was fatally shot during a Minneapolis immigration operation. The 3.5-minute clip was shot from high up and shows Good's vehicle stopped diagonally across the street, obstructing one lane of traffic. It's actually 2 lanes of traffic, but there was enough room to get around. Her horn blares continuously as she rocks side to side in the driver's seat. Behavior one ex-user described as dancing, mocking. It's a game. These people are LARPing. It's a game to them. In their head, they're justice warriors fighting for justice. They're not. What they're fighting for is injustice, because we're a nation of laws, and those laws are arrived at democratically, right? Mr. Democrat, right? And those democratically arrived at laws, right, have to be upheld. So you're not for democracy if you disobey the law or you thwart law enforcement trying to enforce a law, a federal law, right? It's federal jurisdiction. There's a supremacy clause. There's no legal footing to stand on, and they know that, but they go through these semantics, to try to convince people as part of the propaganda, convince people that what they're doing somehow is justified. None of it is justified. If you want to protest, that involves using your mouth to say words and your presence, right? But don't insert yourself where it shouldn't be. You can stand on the sidewalk. You can do whatever you want. You can use a megaphone. You can hold signs, right? But direct action is actually illegal because you're taking action against the legitimate use of law enforcement. All right. I know, going on. A little just aggravated today. New York Post, reckless Democrats blasted for posting skewed portrayal of Renee Nicole Good's fatal shooting by ICE agent. And indeed, it's reckless because of what I just said. Associated Press, Minnesota prosecutor asked public to share Renee Good shooting evidence with her office. The reason the feds are not cooperating with Minnesota over the shooting is because their bias is clear. You have guys like the Minneapolis mayor, is it Jacob Fry, saying shit that isn't tethered to reality. We all saw what happened. You put yourself where you shouldn't be, and then you mock the people you're trying to obstruct. And then when they try to place you under arrest, because mind you, this is not, when she was shot, that was like the 3rd or 4th time they had already spoken to these people. This was not the first encounter between law enforcement and Renee Good and Rebecca Good. It was not the first time. They had already spoken to them several times about not doing what they were doing, and they continued. More from AP. ICE officer shot Renee Good in Minneapolis has served decades in the military and law enforcement. So he is well trained in engagement rules. Okay? And if you can see, he only draws his weapon when the vehicle starts moving forward. And as I said previously, that nobody talks about, if you listen to the audio, she revs her engine a little bit. Now, I covered this before previously, but these stats have actually increased. Just the news, assaults against ICE up 1,300%. Vehicle attacks up 3,200% against ICE. Death threats up 8,000% against ICE. This is the catalyst I'm talking about. The anti-Trump, anti-police, anti-Republican, anti-conservative, and, anti-law, really. No respect for the law. Unreasonable, contrived upheaval is going to drag the United States into a civil war. Or worse. Or worse. Imagine if the Democrats sweep in and take power. You're going to have a purge with a government, just like you have in Venezuela. You have the government's position, and then you have thugs riding around on motorbikes looking for people to abduct, kill, brown shirts, basically. That's what we have in Antifa, these other groups that are violent. Trump's in office now, and things, God, thank you, things are okay, but the left's relentless delusion is really going to put this nation in some real trouble. Despite Trump being in office, it's terrible. The left would say, because Trump is in office, let's be clear what Trump is, a guy that legitimately got elected twice, really 3 times. I mean, don't get me started. Sorry. Some more coffee, maybe. Yeah, that'll wind me down. All right, next up, Wall Street Journal. Videos show how ICE vehicle stops can escalate to shootings. Now, we went over this just a minute ago. Wall Street Journal visual investigation found that Minneapolis ICE killing is one of 13 incidents where federal immigration agents have used deadly force against civilians and vehicles since July. Because vehicles, as we pointed out again and again, doesn't matter if the Wall Street Journal says it or The Nation, if you step in front of a vehicle, is because they're trying to detain the people in the vehicle. And the reason they're in vehicles is because they can escape. They think they're funny. They lock the doors, and then they drive away. They think it's all cute. It's not cute because law enforcement see, because of the stats I just showed you with the ramming events and what have you, is that vehicles can be deadly weapons. We've seen that in the Christmas market attacks and other Muslims attack. Don't forget it was just last year where that guy drove down Bourbon Street in Louisiana, in New Orleans, and killed all those people. A vehicle is a deadly weapon. Now, you want to again get into semantics about, well, the wheels were turned. He wasn't really driving at him. It doesn't matter. They're telling you to get out of the car, and you put the car in drive. She put it in reverse, right? Backed up a little bit, then put it in drive while they were trying to stop her, because they started to hurry when she put it in reverse. And they're trying to stop her, and she thinks she's going to get away. She's really funny. Ha, ha, ha. But there was a law enforcement officer in front of the car. What you get? And the rhetoric continues. Just the news. Seattle mayor calls for people to sign up for ICE mobilization alerts. There's nothing different here than ICE Watch. It's just another acronym. It's another euphemism for what they're doing. ICE mobilization, it's the same thing. It's color revolution bullshit. Right? How do you think the Arab Spring took place? If it wasn't for Twitter, it never would have happened. They use social media to first of all, ratchet up the emotional tension. Then they use it to trigger the protest. The feed is hanging up there. I don't know what's going on. In any case, getting into the headline here, Seattle Mayor Katie Wilson and other city leaders are condemning the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement following the fatal shooting of 37-year-old Renee Nicole Good during an ICE operation in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Wilson, a socialist, urged residents to sign up for the Washington all-ICE mobilization alerts. So she is telling her constituency to get involved in the color revolution. Rise up against law enforcement. It's the same thing we saw in 2020. And there's more. Washington Times. ICE out. Celebrities at Golden Globes wear pins targeting ICE. I don't know. They don't have a picture here, but apparently that did indeed happen. And we have more from the Golden Globes in just a second. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment, share the podcast. So you have celebrities, you have politicians, all leftist progressives telling people to get out and resist legitimate law enforcement operations. It's this kind of shit that got this woman killed. You don't have the right to impede federal law enforcement. I don't care what you believe, you postmodernists. Subjectively, what you believe doesn't matter. We're talking about objective reality that I know you don't really care about, but, whatever. But there's more from the Golden Globes, Fox News. Golden Globes host Nikki Glaser mocks CBS News as best place to see BS News. Well, why did she say that? Because Barry Weiss is at CBS News, and she's trying to make the department, its variety of different news shows and publications, make it more objective. But she's not making it, she is in a sense, but it's not viewed that way. She says, oh, you're making it MAGA friendly. It's not MAGA friendly. It's objective, but she's not paying enough attention to Face the Nation. She did in the beginning. She goes, oh, Maggie, she told the department, you've got to get more conservatives on. And they usually have some. And in the beginning, she was trying to even it out. There was like 3 and 3, which is at least objective. But then you had Ilhan Omar come in, and we'll talk about that. That the fact that Maggie Brennan gave her no hard questions. She asked specifically Ilhan Omar if anti-ICE groups, ICE Watch, etc., were a good way to resist what's happening. She dodged the question, and there was no follow-up. New York Post has a headline, Ilhan Omar urges public to film ICE, chides agent who shot Renee Good for getting in front of a moving car. Like I said before, it was to keep her from fleeing her imminent arrest. And I'll repeat myself. This wasn't the first encounter she had with ICE agents. They had spoken to her one or two times previously about stopping what she was doing, and that the fact that she was illegal, as ICE agents do, they friendly go up and knock on the window and go, if you keep doing this, you're going to be arrested, or, it's going to end up badly for you. They try not to be too specific, like we're going to shoot your ass. But don't forget, law enforcement legally can use deadly force against you. The prerequisites are pretty general for that. So don't get all up in arms like, you have to have a gun or a weapon and you have to be pointing it right at them. No. That's just the law. Change the law. You change the law, whatever. I'll abide by whatever you change the law to. All right, the article goes on to say, what we've seen here in Minneapolis is ICE agents oftentimes jumping out of their cars, these unmarked cars. Oftentimes they're wearing masks. They're approaching, running towards cars. That doesn't make a fucking difference. None of that. They're jumping out of their cars. These unmarked cars. Oftentimes they're wearing a mask. They're approaching, running towards cars. Again, this is all semantics, painting a picture in your head that these officers aren't clearly identifiable with their body armor that says ICE. They got their gear on. They're all tactical. Their tactical vests are all tacked out. There's no mistaking who these people are. Plus, their unmarked cars have little lights in them that flash, like red and blue lights, indicating they're with law enforcement. And the people that are chasing them around are fully aware that they're law enforcement. She's trying to give you the idea that these people are unrecognizable, like you just think they're Antifa or something running at you. That's not the case. Renee Nicole Macklin Good, as you hear her say, she's not mad. She's sitting in the car, peacefully waving cars to get by. You see the other officer, who can clearly see the cars moving, move towards the front of the car to keep her from leaving. He goes on to say, we can see in the videos that have been produced, they haven't been produced. I mean, come on. Produced so far that they are describing is really not what had taken place. The level of rhetoric, is not justifiable to the American people. It's not rhetoric. They put themselves there to impede the operation. Because of this, they were going to put them under arrest. And instead, they tried to flee in a motor vehicle. The officer, I'm not even going to name his name, stood in front of the vehicle to keep her from fleeing. He did so as he saw her backing up. He moved for the front of the vehicle. That's the reasoning. Not to justify a shooting, because they were trying to effect an arrest. PJ Media has an interesting take. When the groundhog pops up, then it's Ilhan Omar right on schedule. Representative Ilhan Omar, as she stated so clearly, Democrat of Minnesota, the whole city of Minneapolis she represents, resurfaced on CBS News Face the Nation Sunday as federal scrutiny intensified around one of the largest welfare fraud scandals in Minnesota history. Like clockwork, when pressure builds, Omar doesn't offer details or, heaven forbid, introspection. Instead, she offers a performance piece indeed. On Sunday morning's Face the Nation, she told Margaret Brennan that federal agents are sowing confusion and chaos, framing enhanced enforcement as persecution. Exactly what she did. The same old drivel, maybe drivel isn't the right word, but the performance It's performative to come out and go, oh, and anybody who hasn't seen the videos, wasn't really watching, just watching the show goes, oh my God, that sounds terrible. She makes it sound terrible, but it's really not terrible. Excuse me 1 second. I have to see if I cannot fix something. Oops. All right. Sorry about that. Sticking with this story, though, the post-millennial also, Ilhan Omar advocated for funds for Somali-run addiction group, later discovered to be a restaurant. That's interesting. The scale and frequency of fraud in Minnesota is staggering, but I fear it's just the tip of the iceberg. Representative Ilhan Omar has been accused of attempting to secure $1 million earmark in a congressional spending bill for a Somali-led addiction recovery organization that shares an address with a Somali restaurant. On Monday, lawmakers unveiled a new spending package totaling at least $174 billion. Iowa Senator Joni Ernst said her office found that Omar had earmarked $1 million through the Department of Justice for an organization called Generation Hope Minnesota. The earmark was included alongside funding requests co-led by Senators Amy Klobuchar and Tina Smith of Minnesota. Ernst said it was a ton of red flags. Now, we don't know if this addiction facility actually exists, but like many of the daycares and health insurance storefronts in Minneapolis, that it has a shared address with a restaurant. Coincidentally, a Somali restaurant. So the shared addresses make it kind of a foggy picture. And Ernst, of course, said that there are tons of red flags. All right, concerning this whole event, this catalyst for civil war, which is what you need for a color revolution. If you didn't know how the Arab Spring kicked off, a young Tunisian man was protesting, did something against the government, broke the law, and was beaten and killed by the security services in Tunisia. That's the incident that kicked off uprisings in a dozen, really, but let's say half a dozen, 8 Arab nations that ended up having severe, serious political changes because of these, the Arab Spring, the color revolutions. All right. So we know the media is on board. The Federalist says so. Corporate media's 7 most brazenly fake claims about the anti-ICE car ramming. Good was just driving past agents. We know that's not true. Number 2, agent was knocked backward but not hit. Now, this is one of the things came from Jacob Fry also. Oh, come on, he wasn't run over. We didn't say it was run over. He was hit by a motor vehicle, though. What, you want to wait till he's run over? No, we're not going to wait till he's run over. It doesn't matter, and all this doesn't matter. As long as the car was in forward motion toward the officer, that's the only justification you need. And that's the law, by the way. Good's car was in reverse. Initially it was, and that's when he stepped in front of the car. And then she started moving forward, revved the engine and started moving forward, regardless where the wheels were pointed. He began to draw his service weapon. Number 4, Judge Good just happened to be there after school drop-off. Again, this rings in with number 1, that it's just coincidence that she happened to be there. That's just not true. She was involved in a anti-government direct action. It's really insurrection, but that's arguable. So the federal government had dispatched ICE officers to begin an operation rounding up criminal illegal aliens. She didn't like that, so she wanted to go out and break the law. She wasn't out there just dropping off her kid. Number 5, good simply panicked. This is what they say often. There's nothing to do with panicking. Good didn't just panic, because this isn't an excuse that this is what you hear all the time from thugs. I was just scared. I was just scared. She didn't seem scared. She was dancing in her car, beeping the horn, dancing. She wasn't scared. She even said, I don't hate you. The agent shot through the driver's side window. I don't have the slide here, but there was a picture, it's arguable, but that showed the 3 shots. One through the windshield, one hit the side mirror, and that might have been the one that killed her. I think it went through the side mirror and struck her. Hard to say. And one in the door. So, you know, I haven't seen ballistics, anything on that as far as the investigation is concerned. But if that's the case, his second 2 shots, really his third shot, was errant because that's when he got hit by the car. So he raised his weapon up after. I mean, this is all arguable. We haven't seen the evidence there. So, but that's what I saw from the photograph. The first one in the windshield, which was errant also. It wasn't spot on. One in the side mirror and the other one in the door. Regardless, justified shoot. Good was unarmed. Yeah, I don't agree with any of that. If you're driving a motor vehicle, you're armed. That's considered a weapon. Sorry to say. All right, we got more. Stay with me now. Fox News Democrat committee chair compares U.S. to Iran, claims both are killing protesters. Ken Martin suggests recent Indianapolis ICE shooting was comparable to Iranian protesters being killed by security officials. It's not the same. In your mind, it's the same because the postmodernists love this objective nonsense, right? Boop, 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 boop. You know, draw these analogies. Not the same. One is a oppressive, autocratic, theocratic regime that polices. I mean, it's really totalitarian. Polices everything from beard length to clothing. And if they're policing shit at that level, you don't think they're going to police protests, something that actually threatens the regime? Again, it's another color revolution, obviously organized by the CIA. Good, bad, or indifferent. You know, I think Trump should be very careful about sending people in there, though. All right, moving on. Real Clear Politics border czar Tom Homan, sanctuary cities and states are complicit, forcing ICE out into the community. We said this time and time again. I don't want to go through it again. He said this even before the shit started. If these sanctuary communities would keep their illegal immigrant criminals in jail, where ICE could just simply go and pick them up, there would be no threat to the community. Obviously, and this is what they worry about, is the non-criminal illegal aliens. Not worry about them, and obviously not worry about citizens being harmed. But they don't want to do that. They're causing this. So yes, sanctuary cities and states are complicit. PJ Media, again, yes, Renee Good's actions met the legal definition of domestic terrorism. Again, this has to deal with Tom Homan and his appearances on the Sunday Talk. He said, quote, but you know, if you look up the definition of terrorism, is there violence? Is there violence? Is there a threat of violence based on an ideology? Yes. That wants to change the way the government does what we do. Look on the definition of terrorism. Yeah, it's simple. I can tell you what they did is illegal. And if you look up this definition of terrorism, it could fall within that definition. If you look up the definition of terrorism. These people, obviously, lesbian couple, have a certain political bend, right? And they were trying to cause violence, obviously with their car. I mean, I don't think that was their intent. But there are others out there who are fighting with police. That's violent. Resisting arrest. That's violent. So we'll go back right there and say, look, resisting arrest. That's violence. So she was resisting arrest. Moving on. National Review. The problem isn't ICE, it's ICE Watch. That is the point I'm trying to make here. It's ICE Watch, and now with this thing in Seattle, whatever Katie Wilson is trying to get people to get involved in, it's anti-ICE direct action. All these leftist groups are organized, and the participants are witting or even unwitting about who's organizing them. Like I said, there used to be an umbrella thing of OFA that spawned all these little NGOs and other little shell companies that fund groups of leftists, anarchists, etc. It's very closely guarded, and it's going to be hard to uncover, but they're there. If you ever looked at the infancy of OFA, they were teaching people how to protest. They teach them tactics. They don't teach them what to say. They say, don't say anything, resist interviews, do not get into dialogue. They call it the dialogue box. Don't get caught in the dialogue box with the media or with conservatives, because obviously they'll lose. And if you look at most leftists out there during these protests, they don't even know what the fuck they're talking about. Certainly not based on any objective reality. There's more. One American News, Jeffries, Newsom, and other Democrats call for Kristi Noem's impeachment over deadly ICE shooting. Oh, yes. Impeach, because she's so criminal. Nothing was criminal about what was done. It's debatable whether or not he should have used excessive force, but it's clear that's going to be ruled justified. It's the same thing with George Floyd. All you knuckleheads that said, oh, the police are killing people. That guy died of an overdose. That was a legal restraint technique in Minnesota, according to the Minnesota police, state police. Having a knee on the back of the neck like that does not constrict the airway. And we know from the footage that he said he couldn't breathe when he originally started resisting arrest. These people, man. You don't care about the facts. I don't like to see people die. I don't like to see anybody die. Renee Good or George Floyd or whoever. That's not the point. The point is you're arguing against law enforcement, and they have a pretty tough job. Nothing to do with my admiration for police, but they go out and do the dirty shit so we don't have to. Post-millennial. Leftist woman attacks RAV. This is a reporter, RAV reporter in Minnesota diner. His crime, wearing an RAV. I think it's Real America's Voice He was wearing an RAV jacket. The unidentified woman had called the camera operator a fascist and a Nazi. Ooh, that's a surprise. Before storming off, she threw liquid on his face and coat. And anyway, the camera operator was assaulted after he didn't say anything. He added that the woman had taken the action while she was there with her kids, her 3 kids. And what she threw on him was a fireball, was alcohol. So she was drinking alcohol with her kids in a diner. First of all, who drinks alcohol in a diner? That's another thing. But because the guy is a conservative. This is very worrisome. It was like the red hat thing in Trump's first term, where people were assaulted for wearing red hats. Sometimes, even if the hat didn't say "Make America Great Again" or anything. There's more. We're going to switch gears here, though. This is the New York Post. So if you didn't forget, the National Guard shooter, the guy that traveled all the way across country to go to D.C. to shoot a National Guardsman and woman. Well, we have some information on that. Biden HR official vouched for National Guard shooter, says he posed no threat to national security, even though he worked for a death squad in Afghanistan. The Biden administration put in a good word for accused National Guard murderer Ramanullah Lockenwall 4 years before the horrific D.C. slaying, insisting he was no threat to national security. A jarring letter from a recommendation obtained by the Post reveals. In the letter, it said, "I am confident that Ramanullah poses no threat to national security of the United States." And it was unearthed by Chuck Grassley. You got to love Chuck Grassley there, man. He is really doing, he's always done a great job as far as I'm concerned, but I'm not going to get too far into that. But so the way he was Afghanistan Special Forces, yeah, working with the CIA. They were death squads, if you didn't know. These zero units. I started reading reports early in the Afghanistan war. So this guy is a trained murderer that was brought into the United States and very likely told to or goaded into or otherwise manipulated into going to D.C. to kill these National Guardsmen. Why? Because this was terrorism, because this is a political act. The National Guard being deployed in D.C., the only legitimate place where they're actually without reproach as far as being deployed, and have this happen so they could skew it in the media as somehow it's the National Guard's fault for walking down the street, et cetera, et cetera. So he drove across country to do that when he could have went to any other state where they're National Guard and shoot them. That was even closer, but he didn't. This was a political act, and obviously he's controlled by the CIA. He's obliged to the CIA for giving him work to kill people and get paid for it in Afghanistan and then getting him here. So they probably told him, we'll take care of your family. Because if you know anything about intelligence and the way they work, they have means to get at you. Probably told you, if you want your family to be safe and secure, do what we say. All right, moving on. National Review again. Feds versus the Fed. If you didn't know what this was here, so the federal government, I'm going to get into the New York Times thing in just a second, subpoenaed Federal Reserve employees because they're going for a criminal indictment of Jerome Powell. Here's the New York Times article. Federal prosecutors open investigation into Fed Chair Powell. The investigation, which is said to center on renovations of the Federal Reserve's headquarters in Washington, signals an escalation in the long-running clash between President Trump and the chair. Fed versus the Fed. Let me make something perfectly clear. The Fed is as federal as Federal Express. It's an independent agency made up of a conglomeration of major banks. So it's making it clear Trump went after the pharmaceutical industry by lowering prices. Trump just went after the oil industry by getting them to lower prices. This hurts the bottom line. This is the only concern of corporations is bottom line. Now he's going after the banks, the big banks, the ones that run the Federal Reserve. Federal prosecutors opened the investigation of Fed chair. So there you go. He's going after the big banks. I applaud this effort. There's a little bad blood between Fed chair and Trump because Trump appointed Jerome Powell in his first term, if you didn't know. It's very, very concerning. But Trump isn't beholden. Powell isn't beholden to Trump. Powell is beholden to the New World Order, which is run by the major banks. So when he's told, you even had people on the board that said, we got to lower rates. The conditions ask for it. You had Powell in there and other people on the board, the banks, saying we're not lowering rates because it hurts Trump. If the economy recovers, Trump's going to be shown in a better light. Associated Press, Federal Reserve Chair Powell says DOJ has subpoenaed central bank, threatens criminal indictment. Good, go after the banks. And if he's the figurehead of the banks, good for Trump. Because that's the problem is, since this central bank was created, the politicians and the administration had to kowtow to the power of money. And it's not what it should be. To echo leftist talking points, the government should be the hedge against corporations. I'm even for yanking corporate charters. More from the New York Times. Judge blocks Trump officials from freezing billions in social services funding. Now, you might have heard this is kind of old. It's a couple days old. So Trump wanted to block the billions of dollars that go to these liberal sanctuary states where there may be fraud, particularly Minnesota, but also New York, California, Colorado, and Illinois. And before investigations see where, because of the billions of dollars possibly have been lost in fraud, but a judge has blocked it, obviously a liberal judge, says you can't do that. We have to feed the children, even if they don't really exist. There's more, a couple more before you head out here. Wall Street Journal, America's job market has entered the slow lane. Hiring sputtered, the unemployment rate rose. 2025 put a decisive end to the hottest job market in a generation. Indeed, actually, recently, I don't know when this came out. This came out yesterday. Unemployment actually went down, according to the New York Times yesterday. So, hiring is sputtering because of AI, really. It has nothing to do with it has to do with a changing economy with AI. And everybody knows that that's what's going on here. So, it's not that big a deal. Also, when you lower inflation, unemployment rises. That's just the way it works. So what would you rather have? Lower inflation and higher unemployment? Of course you would. Sometimes you don't. Sometimes you want lower unemployment and you risk a little higher inflation, but the conditions have to matter. Anyway, I don't want to get too much into that. Here's something else from the New York Times. Washington National Opera is leaving the Kennedy Center. The opera, which has performed at the Arts Center since 1971, was concerned about declines in attendance and donations during President Trump's second term. They just don't like it because he put his, this is the problem, delusion. He put his name on the building, and so they want out. It's just ridiculous. Again, not unusual from performing arts, but performative action to say, we don't like Trump. Let's wear a pin. Get ICE out. All right, and as I said before, we started with Venezuela. We're going to end with Venezuela. Just the news, Venezuelan opposition leader Machado can't give Nobel Peace Prize to Trump. Nobel Institute says, well, yeah, she can. Maria Corina Machado could transfer her recent Nobel Peace Prize to President Donald Trump. Now, Maria Corina Machado is the Venezuelan opposition leader that is in Europe right now, stressing that the award cannot be shared, transferred, or reassigned once it has been granted. She's coming to the United States to meet with Trump, and she promised that she's going to give him the award. So she can give him the actual physical award. That's not what I'm talking about here. She could give him the award. The Nobel Peace Prize said, well, we're not going to, if you give it to him, we're not going to put Donald Trump's name on it or anything. But she has the physical award. She could just hand it to him. Doesn't matter what the institute says. But the award cannot be shared, transferred, or reassigned. It's not going to be reassigned. It's still going to have her name on it. But she could do whatever she wants with the physical object. There's a couple more. U.S. raid in Venezuela signals deterrence to adversaries on three fronts. Representative Don Bacon says operation could justify Russian military actions against Ukraine or Chinese invasion of Taiwan. The way I see it is a great display of military prowess, and it shoots a warning shot over the bow of adversaries, and also lets them know that this operation could easily be repeated. I think it's brilliant, and it's with little consequence. It's of little consequence. There's more. DSA, which is the Democratic Socialists of America leaders, paint Venezuela as socialist utopia to thousands of young Americans while ignoring Maduro's human rights records. Exactly. Socialist autocracies are the worst. I mean, it's always like, it's for the all. We're doing everything for the all, but then they let their main source of revenue, the oil industry, fall into disrepair. They pump little out. It's always the same thing. You're better off lowering prices and selling more. And any businessman, capitalist will tell you that. You're better to lower prices and sell more than to raise prices and sell less. But that's the way the socialists operate because they want the money now. Couple more. I think this is the last one. No, we got a couple more to go here. Post-millennial, 26-year-old Canadian euthanized under MAID after losing eyesight, chose death over care. And her reasoning here, this young man's reasoning here is they were infirmed. And if you make this available as a state-sanctioned solution, you're going to get more and more people to, everybody that is contemplating suicide, and a lot of people do, especially if they're on antidepressants, they can go to the government. The government will say, sure, just sign this organ donor card. Organ donor card. Couple more here. Zero Hedge, Germany's intelligence services set to expand surveillance. According to plans from the Federal Chancellery, Germany's Foreign Intelligence Service, the BND, which has looked up my ass before, is set to significantly expand its surveillance capabilities. The focus is particularly on the internet communication, including in the agency's monitoring catalog going forward. But you don't understand about the BND. It's not just Germany. The BND has one of the most sophisticated internet surveillance operations, and they're up everybody's ass. Everybody that they don't like, everybody who has an opinion that is anti-socialist state is investigated. If you're trying to hide your identity anonymously and to broadcast information on the internet, the BND is going to be there, especially if you're against the New World Order, et cetera, et cetera. Also from Zero Hedge, Mercedes relocates to Hungary, 20,000 Germans set to lose their jobs. This isn't surprising either, because that's what socialists do. They try to tax. It's like California. You try to tax to get yourself out of a spending hole, and then people just say, fuck this, we're leaving. So Mercedes, a German company, is leaving Germany. Thanks for joining me today. Don't forget to engage the channel, like, subscribe, leave a comment, share the podcast. Sorry about that technical miscue as I got started today. I don't know. It's a couple little, bugs in there. It's just, you think you have everything set up right and something goes haywire. Anyway, again, thanks for joining me. Engage the channel. Join me every day, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. on Rumble, YouTube, other places as well. X. Or join me on social media, Getter Minds, Facebook, Truth Social, Substack. Remember, you're under attack psychologically and biologically, so stay hip to the trick. So, just a reminder, no episode tomorrow morning, but tomorrow night we'll have another episode of Tuesdays with Perry. I'm going to play the clip from the shooting in Minneapolis, the ICE shooting, the now famous clip. And I'm also going to play the clip of the Chicago police chief talking about how people can legally respond to police operations and how they can't. And then we're going to talk about a bunch of other things, which I didn't touch on today, which was the protests going on in Iran. That's of obviously some concern, but we're going to talk about that at length with Perry tomorrow. So thanks again for joining me. I'll see you tomorrow night. Respect.
This is all a conspiracy. This is all a conspiracy. Don't you know that it's a conspiracy, man?
The New World Order.
Less than 3% of you people read books.